More than 20 years ago, when these things, or their forerunners at least, came onto the market, there were nothing like this, the dreadful old analog phones. It was thought there were going to be maybe 100,000 in South Africa by now, but South Africa moved on quickly, adopted quickly, and accepted the mobile device as the communication tool of the future. But less and less, this is a phone. It's actually more of a communication device, and in order to do that, it uses data, lots and lots of data. These things have got voracious appetites for the stuff. It's where cell phone companies are making more and more of their money. Now, if you've got a data bundle, you know exactly what you're paying for. You may not use all your data, but do you dare go over your allocated bundle? If you do, you start paying like you, I don't know, what's the most expensive thing in the world? Data becomes a very expensive commodity. Mamaloko Kubai is chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Telecommunications and Postal Services. She is chairing a 2-day hearing, the first of which has now been completed, into the very, very high costs of South African telecommunications, particularly mobile telecommunications. Thank you for taking a break out of the 2-day hearings. What is at stake? What is the purpose of a parliamentary hearing into what it costs me and you to use this thing?
Thank you for the opportunity, and greetings to the viewers. I think it's very important. That's why I felt even communicating to the viewers what we intend to do as the committee is important. What is at stake is the ability for us to be able to achieve what we want as South Africa, broadband rollout. That's the first thing. But secondly, the issue of just being able to communicate, bridging the barriers of communication between communities. You can't continue as a society whereby, in terms of the years that we are an advanced society, and you find that people are still battling to be able to communicate. One, either using through the methods of WhatsApp, Facebook messages and all those things, others through calling. I mean, you look at the cost currently, there's a lot of people who are complaining about the cost of data that is so extremely expensive. All of us who are using iPhones, for example, you know how they just go. You put it there, and especially the prepaid users, it just vanishes. And then you go as well, the issues around use it or lose it. If I'm a contract and have my data, I don't finish them by end of the month, I don't have them next month, but I've paid for them.
No, but that's one of the big controversies, isn't it, in South Africa, where there is this, you might buy 2 gigs a month, you use 1.5 gigs. That half gig, you've paid for it, you should be able to bank it, many people would argue. The cell phone companies, however, have ruled in their wisdom that falls away. It's an intangible thing. You can't bank your data because, I don't know, then you might be able to download movies or something useful with it. Where does the committee stand on this particular
Look, we feel that data costs and all cost of communication must be affordable for everybody. I mean, we just had a presentation from the department. We finished the presentation from ICASA. We had a presentation from CSIR. We'll have the others, but the mobile operators are coming tomorrow. So it's going to be interesting. Most of data are coming through. The presentations are also showing us the trends in terms of the cost, who is spending, who is using more. For example, in terms of the current operators that we have, it's coming across as Vodacom being more expensive. We'll hear from them tomorrow if they are indeed expensive or what is the issue. We verify, we correlating that information together. ICT Africa sent a document that gives us an analysis globally. They're raising issues around infrastructure development, they're raising issues around numbers, but I still feel from where we're sitting is that, and I was saying to them in the committee, speak to the level that we would understand. I have a problem with the money I'm paying, that is a lot. Explain to me why I'm paying so much in a simple term.
I can tell you exactly what the cell phone operators are going to say. In order to get the new generation, and I think we're sitting on 4G now, and you've got Paul Harrison, Michael Jordan and Ravi Naidu who've announced that they're going to have their own wireless network of 5G. In order to evolve and improve service and a fewer drop calls, we have to invest in this infrastructure. It's massively expensive. The Rand devalued by 30% last year. I'm telling you what they're going to tell you tomorrow. And they're going to give you a sob story of what good corporate citizens they are by making billions of rands worth of investment every single year to ensure that you and I can have the luxury of communicating in a way that 20 years ago we could never have imagined. Are we not just spoiled?
I think for me, yes, they can explain their side of the story, but it's to validate what they bring into us against the reality. The fact that I can be able to make a call for less at midnight, for example, shows that during the day I can be able to make a call with less.
It's about
Now,
supply and demand, though.
What is
there's
the challenge?
there's
Yes.
limited spectrum in South Africa. That partially is a state issue, that the cell phone providers are constrained by the lack of spectrum. And if only the Minister of Communications would free up the spectrum, then the cell phone operators would have a far broader band in which to play, and they could reduce the calls during the day, they will argue.
We do acknowledge the challenges in terms of spectrum delay. I think we've raised it as a committee very sharply, that it's unjustifiable the time that we've taken as South Africa to release. I mean, we could have even released the 2.6 band and left the others, which are the ones that we're currently waiting for migration, and just to stimulate the investment in the sector. That is acceptable. That is a fair critique to government, to all the role players. That I think is correct. But it's still not justifiable. Why would I pay more in South Africa and pay less in Nigeria or in Ghana? Yes, Nigeria, you can argue that Nigeria, because they have more numbers, the consumers are more. But Ghana, the figures in terms of population versus our population is the same. Tanzania, the same. Now, we've got to look into detail. I think there's still room for them to reduce. I mean, ICASA presented to us to show the trend of going down. In 2010, it cost more. It used to cost more for data. Now it's going down.
I mean, one of the great ironies, Alan Craig, who founded Vodacom and then left Vodacom and then went to Cell C, was in the throes of a significant price war, using Cell C as a battering ram to beat up Vodacom and MTN. He then had a stroke, unfortunately, did Alan Craig, and his successors have continued with the big fight. Is the problem that we don't have enough competition in the South African market?
Partially it is, and partially you can say no. Looking at the trend as well, with the numbers of consumers that we have, too many companies will suffer. I mean, Cell C is battling to move up the numbers. If you look at the statistics that they've got, they still utilize. You don't have people leaving Vodacom. South African consumers are a very dynamic society.
Amen.
They're loyal to the brand, they're loyal to where they're sitting. And at times, I think, or more almost even when abused by where they're sitting. Because even if the money, I mean, look at the campaign Cell C had of saying, move, we prepared to pay even your contract. People never moved.
But that's a service concern as well, but simply because they don't have the reach, they don't have the spread of signal, and they have a brand problem, does Cell C.
I think it's a brand problem. That's what I'm saying, that because of that brand consciousness, it's no longer, even if, I think, for example, for somebody in Gauteng, Cell C's performance in Gauteng in terms of service and availability is good.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's bad in remote areas where they do not have infrastructure. But somebody in Gauteng has not moved, despite the low cost. I think at some point they did WhatsApp free, but still, consumers remained with their MTN.
It's a schlep. Now, you and I are very spoiled. We're both lucky enough to have iPhones, and we consume data, and we go online, and we can use WhatsApp, and we can access our Facebook accounts and our Twitter accounts, and we can order stuff online if we choose to, using these marvelous devices. But South Africa is a multi-tiered economy. How is this committee, this series of committee hearings, going to impact somebody who lives in Port St. John's, or who lives in a small rural community in Limpopo or in the Northern Cape, who doesn't have access to multiple towers and frankly the budget to operate one of these things?
Look, that's one of the critical areas. That's why we've got an SMME coming in. Thibaut Touch started a campaign to say #data must fall. He's a small business coming up saying, you impacting on my growth. Because the people who want to listen to me on my radio station do not have data. Who are these people? These are young people. These are people in almost remote areas as well who know him as a celebrity. They want to listen to him. Now, if we discuss these issues around access, because it shouldn't be, that's why we're focusing mainly on the prepaids, because prepaids is your lower market, people who do not have money. Me and you can afford to go into a contract, which most of the time has better benefits than a person who's on a prepaid. That's why we're focusing that. Present to us, tell us, even comparative. Because sometimes you find that me and you get data lesser because you are in a contract, because they are secured this income. Whereas a person who's buying prepaid, the data is more expensive. And we're saying to them, compare, tell us what is the difference between the two so that we can understand. But secondly, the issue around, because most of us will focus on data, affordability. Somebody's still crying about being able to make a phone call.
Yeah, exactly. No, but and how? I mean, what is Telkom's role in this? It's a sort of it's a hybrid state-owned enterprise, government owns together with the PIC just over 50% of Telkom. Yet it operates like a private company. We see them shifting the goalposts in terms of what they charge and when they charge and how they charge, as they corporatize, as they must do for survival and not to become a burden on the state. Do you see a role for Telkom, or is this a free market sort of exercise that you're embarking on?
I see a role for everybody. And in the sense that, for example, when ICASA issues regulation, this is have been my argument. And I think if you look at what Germany has done, almost, what they did was to say to the operators, we give you spectrum, these are the obligations. We do not have access to the urban areas until we've given you an area in the rural area where you can go and cover in terms of access. Then after then you can come back. And that has been a success story, because they all went out, connected in the rural areas because they were chasing to be the first in the urban areas, because that's where revenue is. And that's what, it's simple. That's what ICASA needs to do in terms of regulation. The previous two regulatory obligations, I think they were not properly constructed, and I don't think they really impacted a lot into South Africa.
What are you, as chair of this committee, hoping by the end of these 2 days to have achieved?
What we're hoping is to understand the current status, where are we sitting the cost, where we have valid information to say, actually, this is the high cost. Because what we want to do is to compile this report, like the previous committee has done. My predecessor, Eric Kolwani, managed to achieve the removal of the call termination rate. We're hoping as well the same process to follow here. We compile the report, we get the National Assembly to adopt it, and then we can be able to ask for implementation of it.
I wish you luck on the last day of the hearings. Amaloka Kubai is chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Telecommunications and Postal Services. It is deeply complex. It is, you try and decipher what your cell phone bill actually means. You get a detailed bill and it tells you about your data consumption. I challenge anybody without a PhD in cell phone bills to tell you exactly where your money went. It is a complex issue, and it is one with which this committee is grappling. It's got another day of hearings tomorrow, and we'll see what comes out of it. Thank you so much for watching the Moneymakers this evening. Till next time, bye-bye.